Story from Guillermo del Toro.
If you know something you're not telling me, you're gonna tell me.
You gotta go now and you gotta take that thing with you.
Nominated for 13 Academy Awards and the winner of Best Picture. Watch The Shape of Water for free, starting December 20th on CBC Gem. You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen app.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. At noon, it's -9 downtown with light snow and -8 in Brandon, light snow and -16 in Thompson. Doctors Manitoba is reaching out to American physicians to come and practice here if they're worried about political changes in the U.S. Shortly after the U.S. election, the Manitoba Physician Group hatched a plan to advertise in states like North and South Dakota and Florida. Chief Executive Officer Teresa Oswald says Manitoba is an untapped resource.
Low cost of living, fabulous lakes, not having to wrangle with a potentially repealed Affordable Care Act, a single payer, all of the things that are great about Manitoba. We want to get that front and center in the minds of U.S. physicians who might be considering making a move.
Oswald says the one-page ad aims to augment what the provincial government is already doing to recruit healthcare workers. She says in the last year, only one doctor moved to Manitoba from the U.S. Community centers in Winnipeg are getting some much-needed financial help from the city.
2 sticks in case I break one.
Mayor Scott Gillingham playing a game of shinny with kids on the outdoor rink at the Sir John Franklin site of the Corridon Community Centre. He was there to announce $1.1 million for community centre upgrades at 13 facilities. Sir John Franklin has had its outdoor rink replaced. Gillingham says community centres are the heart of any neighbourhood.
When you played baseball with that team or hockey with that team, you form bonds, you create stories, and it's key to not only Winnipeg's past, but now with these investments, these renovation funds, they ensure that we can create stories across Winnipeg in our community centres for years to come.
The money will pay for repairs, safety improvements, and upgrades like energy-efficient windows and doors. To Parliament Hill now and the ongoing talk about the Prime Minister's future.
If it was me, I'd be gone a while ago, but he has the right to be wrong. I would take more of a read of the room and accept that judgment.
That is Liberal MP Sean Casey. He is among what is believed to be a growing number of Liberals calling for Justin Trudeau's resignation. Many are doing so behind closed doors, but others, like Ontario MP Yvonne Baker, are speaking openly.
I'm doing this because I think it's in the best interest of the country and of the party. I've heard from countless constituents, countless Canadians who want a change. They want a change in prime ministers, but they don't want Pierre Poilievre to be that change. They don't want Pierre Poilievre to be prime minister. And so I believe that a change in leadership of the Liberal Party would allow us to address that call for change from Canadians.
Meanwhile, at some point, Trudeau will need to announce a cabinet shuffle in the wake of the resignations of Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland and Housing Minister Sean Fraser. Canada's inflation rate continues to fall. The latest update from Statistics Canada shows the national rate dipped to 1.9% last month, down from 2% in October. Peter Armstrong has more.
There's an element of relief for Canadian households in these numbers. The stuff you need, the stuff we all have to buy, came in below expectations. The price for groceries was up 2.6% year over year. The cost of gasoline actually fell 0.5% from last year. And that's great for consumers. It's important for the economy and for the Bank of Canada, but it doesn't mean overall prices aren't exceptionally high and still feel like we're absorbing these increases in prices, because we are. You just have to go back on a further timeline than last year or last month. If you go back to 2021, grocery prices are up 19.6%. Shelter prices are up 18.9%. Canadian households are still absorbing those price increases, and they'll be absorbing them for a long time yet, even after the official StatCan number hits its target. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.
Manitoba's inflation has shrunk to just 0.9%, the lowest across the country. This year, Canada has seen the highest supply in rental housing in 30 years, but the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says that increase was mostly driven by highly priced units, and they were too expensive for most renters. The report says the vacancy rate across the country rose slightly, but it still remains below the 10-year average, and it says affordability remains a problem, with wages barely keeping up with rent increases. Russia is vowing revenge for the killing of one of its top generals.
Уничтожить заказчиков, которые находятся в Киеве.
Dmitry Medvedev is deputy chairman of Russia's Security Council. He says Russia needs to do everything in its power to destroy Ukraine's political and military leadership. The head of Russia's nuclear and chemical troops was killed along with his assistant in Moscow by a bomb placed in an electric scooter. A Ukrainian official called him a legitimate target who had committed war crimes. Visibility is poor again today for drivers in New Delhi, India. That's bumper-to-bumper traffic in the capital this morning, made worse by another spike in the air quality index. This new blanket of smog comes after weeks of particularly bad air quality readings. Today's reading is listed as severe. Schools are closed, with most classes now being done online, and employers are again being told to allow at least half of their staff to work from home. That is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 12:30.
Good afternoon, Manitoba. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 97.9 FM in Brandon, 100.9 FM in Thompson. I'm Emily Brass, sitting in as your host today. Here's what's coming up on the show. From fancy gowns to ugly sweaters, everyone from kids to Santa will show off their holiday style at the Christmas Fashion Show in Thompson. We'll find out more about this fun annual event at the Mall of the Arts. Today's call-in topic is a fun one and sweet. Tell us about your favorite holiday treat, the one you must bake or eat every single year. But up first, the number of drug overdoses continues to rise in Brandon. We'll speak with the city's police chief to hear his concerns. Brandon's police chief is sounding the alarm on drug overdoses. 7 people in that city have died from overdoses so far this year. That's more than twice the number of overdose deaths from 2 years ago. Joining us to talk about that is Brandon Police Chief Tyler Bates. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. How are you today?
Oh, I'm okay. So you've been looking at the numbers on overdoses, fatal and non-fatal. What do you find troubling about the trends?
Yeah, certainly we've seen a spike over the last couple of years in terms of the fatalities that are the result of drug usage. So if we look back over the course of the last couple of years, we had 3 fatalities in 2022, and we had 5 this last year in 2023, and we're up to 7 this year here in this year. So certainly that precipitous climb is concerning. And most recently this month, we're just 2 weeks into December here, and we've had 6 overdoses that transpired that were not lethal, fortunately, but resulted in the necessity of sounding the alarm. So, for example, last month in the entirety of November, we had 3 overdoses. So to have double that number in the first few weeks of December is certainly concerning. When you consider that in the 50 overdoses we had this past year, that 7 of them resulted in fatalities, certainly couldn't stand pat with the number of overdoses we had this month without alerting the public of the grave danger that that exists at present right now. So certainly within the realm of possibility, or perhaps even probability, that there is a toxicity to the drug supply that's circulating in Brandon right now that is more extreme than typical.
Yeah, I mean, what are you seeing in terms of the toxicology when you do have these overdoses?
Well, I don't have data with respect to that, so that's a lengthy process. That there are toxicology laboratory work that takes place, but it's not something that is received right at the time of an overdose. It certainly takes some time to receive that data. So all we have to go on, really, in terms of identifying a problem is the magnitude, the number of overdoses that are taking place, right? So when we see a precipitous climb from 3 in a month to 6 in the first few weeks of the next month, that's definitely concerning. It's something we have to pay attention to. Drug supply.
But there must be some certain drugs you're more concerned about, like fentanyl or meth, or are there certain things that you think are maybe related to these numbers going up?
No, absolutely. It's well documented. That the increase in lethality surrounding drug usage, that fentanyl and methamphetamine are certainly concerning opioids that contribute to the increasing gravity of addiction issues and the risks associated to drug use activity.
And when a spike within the last 2 weeks happens like that, I mean, does that speak to what kind of supply is out on the streets right now?
Yeah, certainly that's our perspective. That's my perspective. Is that when we have that spike, when we're seeing an increase in overdoses, that it certainly speaks to a drug supply that is tainted, perhaps, and more lethal than typical. So that's something that we need to be in constant dialogue with our care providers with respect to, right? So, in terms of individuals that are known drug users that struggle with addictions, we've been very mindful here locally in Brandon to notify all of our service providers that work with the population that uses substances, to make sure that they're aware of the risk.
So you're speaking with the outreach workers, but I think you also wanted the greater public to know about it. Like, what are some of the efforts along those lines to get the word out?
No, absolutely. I appreciate your interest in this. Is an example of getting that word out, and through social media and through our dialogue with our local media outlets. Really, really important from a public safety perspective, that through all available means that we're communicating with respect to this risk, right?
Mm-hmm. And you just touched on some of the social factors. What are some of the other things on the social level that you think are contributing to the increase in drug use and overdoses?
It's. I think it would be speculative for me to comment specifically on that, but I think that the social isolation that surrounded COVID, that's been well documented as well. That we're still in the recovery process post-COVID, really, in terms of that social isolation piece. And there was a spike in addictions over that period of time where there was disconnection and social isolation. And Christmas time is also a difficult time of year for a lot of people, right? That whether they've experienced loss or otherwise, whether they're struggling with depression or loneliness or whatever the case may be. I think that it's certainly within the realm of possibility that the season might be a hard season for some.
Yeah. And what kind of social supports do you think Brandon still needs?
Well, we do have many wonderful support agencies on the medical side and, on the social connection side, in terms of facilities that provide food and warming spaces, that are compassionately providing, empathetic care for people that are in this situation. That said, the need is greater than those supports in some respect. And we've seen, for example, a place called Fanny's Place open up recently that is providing care and support and beds for people that are struggling with addiction to come out the other side and recover, and those types of spaces and that investment, is an ongoing need, right? So, there's talk of a future sobering center here in Brandon as well that will provide intervention and support, again, for those people that might not only need a bed and a warm place to sleep at night, but some intervention, some care, some addictions treatment, and the opportunity to invest in wellness and change their lives for the better, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Changing subjects quickly before we let you go, you've said that the Brandon Police Service is short-staffed. What kind of impact is that having on the city and with dealing with these challenges we've been going over?
certainly we are in the midst, not unlike many other police agencies, of challenges on the recruiting front and in populating our frontline service providers within the policing realm. So we're challenged right now with about a 10% vacancy rate, and that certainly creates some challenges in terms of having resources available to respond to calls for service and connecting vulnerable citizens with support service providers where there is that need, right? So these are things that we've been really proactive with on the recruiting front. So we're anticipating the start of a new spring intake class, and we're very much in the recruiting mode right now as far as processing applications and identifying that next generation of police officers.
And I think you said too that recruiting is different these days.
Yeah, I think it's been a real transition. It used to be that applicants walked through our doors, and there really was not a lot of proactive effort required, to identify the next generation of police officers, right? And it's just such a competitive industry now within policing, and the needs are dire across policing agencies that it's really important that that we're proactive in seeking out the best possible candidates for Brandon Police Service. And in light of that shift, and the necessity to really be proactive in highlighting the attractiveness of Brandon as a place to work and live and thrive, and Brandon Police Service in particular, we hired a recruiting specialist in the month of May this past year, and she has been hard at work, and not just active within the city of Brandon, but really across all of Western Canada in terms of trying to attract the best possible candidates.
Well, we really appreciate your time today, Chief Bates, for explaining everything that you're doing out there.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for getting this important message out and this important story out, because I think the more aware people are with respect to hazards and dangers, within society, and in this particular case, the lethality of the drug supply within the city of Brandon, that we're all contributing to a safer city and a safer environment.
Tyler Bates is Chief of Brandon Police.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you, when it happens,
and how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
It's 12:17. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 90.9 FM in Flin Flon, 990 AM in Morden. I'm Emily Brass, sitting in as your host. Let's take a look at the weather around the province. Right now, the hot spot is Melita, where it's 7 degrees Celsius. The cold spot to Dooley Lake at minus 25. Oh, to Dooley Lake, I think you were the cold spot yesterday, too. Sorry about that. In Barron Rivers right now, there's light snow. It's minus 12. Brandon, minus 8 with light snow. In Churchill, minus 23 and mostly cloudy. In Dauphin, light snow and minus 10. Flin Flon, drifting snow, minus 20 at the moment. In Gillam, light snow and minus 20. Island Lake, minus 15 with light snow. Lynn Lake, minus 20 and sunny. In Norway House, cloudy and minus 14. Portage La Prairie, light snow and minus 8. To Dooley Lake, as we mentioned, minus 25 and cloudy. Hazy in the Paw and minus 18. In Thompson, minus 18 with light snow. And here in Winnipeg, it's minus 10 with light snow at the airport. We're going to see some sunny breaks this afternoon with a few stray flurries, a high of minus 9 and kind of breezy too. Tonight, mainly clear, breezy with a low of minus 22. And for tomorrow in Winnipeg, mainly sunny, minus 24 in the morning, and then going up to a high of minus 19 and breezy. Well, how will you be showing off your style over the holiday season? Perhaps an elegant gown for the fancier occasions, or maybe you prefer putting on an ugly sweater? People in Thompson are going to be strutting their styles on the runway this Saturday at the Christmas fashion show. It's all happening in City Centre Mall at the Mall of the Arts. And joining us now is Mall of the Arts co-founder Andrea Stevens. Hi, Andrea.
Hello, good afternoon, Emily.
So you've been doing this holiday fashion show for a few years now. What motivated you to start it up?
Well, I simply put, I love our community, and I feel like our event started at a time where COVID was high in action, and we needed to do something positive. So we started doing events online, and that just transitioned to us doing once restrictions lifted, to us doing things in person, and people showed up, and it was uplifting. It was exactly what we wanted, just to raise people's spirits in a time where it was kind of hard to think positive.
Yeah, I'm sure that made a really nice difference around the holidays, especially. How is
Yeah.
this year's edition of the fashion show going to be different than the past ones?
So every year it's been the Ugly Christmas Sweater Fashion Show, and this year we just called it the Christmas Fashion Show. And that's because we do see some young people, all ages, that just want to get dazzled up. And, Christmas is quite diverse. So, we're going to actually have some dancers showcasing their jingle dresses at one of the intermissions. But yeah, I wanted it just to be still uplifting, still showing off your Christmas swag, but not the ugliest sweater anymore. Just because I think we're just diversifying, and we're just widening our horizons, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess people can still wear an ugly sweater if they want, but there's other options.
For sure. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
it's
and
so
there's
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying it's just about being creative. So that's what it's all about. So whether you're creative with your ugly sweater and ugly whole outfit, or creative with flashy outfit, it's yeah, that's the point.
Exactly. Express yourself. So it's not a fashion show for designers. It's for anyone who wants to get up there.
It is, yes, exactly. And I guess I'd love to give a shout out to all the stores, because I've never done this before. But it's actually a great opportunity for people to walk around and check out, like, I'd say probably downtown City Centre Mall probably has the most fashionable store. So we got Eclipse and Warehouse One, we got Ardeen, and then there's things in Mall of the Arts.
Yeah, so you can do a little shopping while you're there.
Exactly, right? And then you can change, people can come to our fashion hideout, and they can change outfits and model it. So, we'll have Santa walk down the runway. We usually do a dramatic opening and introduce Santa. And then the fashion show will start at the same time. So you can get your Santa photos done, and then zip across to the runway and, change out your outfits and show a different side of yourself with, your swag. So I'm just saying, like, people can kind of shop around and get jeweled up or get a new outfit from one of the stores and model it right away.
Yeah, that's so much fun. And, you touched on the jingle dresses and that the fashions won't be the only thing on stage that day. What else is going to be happening maybe during the intermission?
So far we've got the Juniper jingle dress dancers are going to come and do a showcase for us during the intermission. And sometimes, again, just being, fun and not making it too demanding or serious, sometimes I will open up the mic for kids to come and sing, so they can come and sing a Christmas carol or two and just showcase themselves that way if they don't feel any pressure. And then, I guess alongside that, we'll be running the Santa booth. So it's going to be pretty busy.
Mm-hmm. And this is all happening at Mall of the Arts in City Centre Mall, as you mentioned. Can you briefly tell us more about your shop, and what do you do there at the Mall of the Arts?
Sure, yeah. So it's not happening at the Mall of the Arts storefront. City Centre Mall management has been amazing. They supply us with tables and chairs and our runway carpets and moral support. They do all of that provision, and it actually happens in the center court of the mall. But it's very helpful this year that we have a storefront right beside where we'll be working the event. Our storefront, what we do is we consign local artwork from local artists. So we've got artwork from Churchill, Snow Lake, Lynn Lake, Nelson House. Sorry, just drawing some blanks here. But yeah, so we just, when we say local artists, local as in northern Manitoba. And we are partnered with an organization called Imagine Northern. And what that does is that helps us to boost each of our communities' local artists by banding together, if that makes any sense, so that we know what's happening in each of our communities, and we're meeting artists from each of our communities and uplifting them everywhere throughout the north.
So another great place to shop while you're out there for the fashion show.
Exactly, yes.
And you know, you mentioned how you started Mall of the Arts during COVID, or, you know, that's when you were really getting things rolling. How does it feel to see that it's still thriving, you know, a few years in?
It's amazing. It's not what I wrote in the original business plan that I had, but, you know, that's how these things work. You know, we're now right in downtown, and I love it. I get to meet our community, the heart of our community, you know, everybody from, you know, people who aren't doing so well to people who are doing really well. And it's been a place where they can come and just feel uplifted for, even if it's a few moments, because that's what music and art does, and that's what self-expression does. You know, instead of holding on to these things that are bothering you inside, you can let it out without being judged. You know, it's try and make a safe space for everybody. And so, yeah, that's not what I always imagined, that we would be in some big, huge center, and I had a great big plan around it, but we're in a small place where people feel not intimidated. And so, yeah, I feel like we are right where we're supposed to be, and lots more great things to come from not just us, it's our community. So it's a place to see, you know, the talents of your community.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on people feeling like it's a safe space, and I guess people feel free to express their emotions when they come in there.
Yeah. We do, I try to do an open mic almost every day. I found that it's very hard to do it every day, so I'd say probably about 80% of the days that I'm there. And, I mean, we've gotten pretty rowdy, and I check in with our neighbors, you know, shoppers. Shoppers join like, oh, you know, is it too loud? And they've all been very supportive. But yeah, so it's just a time where, and people might be shy, saying, oh, I want to sing, but I'm too shy. And, you know, just no judgment, just, you know, pull up my tablet, pull up a karaoke song, and, you know, vent for a minute or so. And they very much love it, because it's, you know, it's not a competition, it's not judgment, it's just, you know, sing a song and make yourself feel good for a second.
Oh, I love that. It's great to have that encouragement and support when you get on the mic, because, you know, performing can be scary.
Yeah, little kids too do it. It's pretty amazing.
And so, you know, speaking of getting up on stage, I guess it's more like the runway with the fashion show. What would you say to encourage people to come out this weekend and maybe get up and display their outfits?
I'd say it's kind of like the perfect time to kick off, you know, the Christmas season. The Christmas season's already been started, but it really does just get you in the mood, you know, just by getting out there and being goofy and crazy, or being, you know, yourself, however you feel like being. And then you're getting, you know, a couple of pictures and snapping that moment, and you've got something to hold, you know, hold dear to you for the next year or so until we do our next one next year. Might be something a little bit different. Every year it's nice to change things up. But yeah, it's just the perfect time to, you know, right before Christmas, just to show off and you know, have a light heart.
Oh, it sounds like so much fun. Hope you have a great time. Thank you for joining us, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Emily, for noticing us and what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a special place, and we appreciate it. Andrea Stevens is co-founder of the Mall of the Arts in Thompson.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire, Jack Frost nipping at your nose. Yuletide carols being sung by a choir and folks dressed up from head to toe. Well, everybody knows a turkey and some mistletoe helps to make the season bright. Tiny tots with their eyes all aglow will find it hard to sleep tonight. They know the same.
That was the Brothers Landreth with the Christmas song. Get you more into the Christmas spirit, because coming up on our call-in conversation, we want to hear about your favorite holiday treat, the baked good you must eat or bake yourself every single holiday season. Let us know why it's your favorite. I'll give you the numbers now if you want to call in, or write them down and be ready as soon as we open up the lines. That's 204-780-0893, or you can text us at 204-588-7355. The news is next.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon. I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. Appealing to American doctors to see the Manitoba advantage. That's the message in a one-page ad campaign by Doctors Manitoba to physicians in North and South Dakota and Florida. Chief Executive Officer Teresa Oswald says after the U.S. election, her organization decided to look south of the border for doctors who may be worried about the future of care there. She says the ad talks about Manitoba's low cost of living, lack of political interference in care, and single-payer universal health care.
And the details of how much easier it is, frankly, to deal with the finances of medicine, that's a story that we can tell down the road. Main message here is come to Manitoba. It's beautiful, it's friendly, and you can practice medicine in the way that you were educated.
Oswald says last year, only one physician came to Manitoba from the U.S. compared to dozens from other countries. She says with the current doctor shortage, there is room for both. There are signs Israel and Hamas could be moving closer to a Gaza ceasefire and a hostage release deal. The talks have been deadlocked for months, but now the White House says negotiators are making progress. Trent Murray has the latest from Tel Aviv.
Speculation is building that Israel and Palestinian militant groups led by Hamas could be nearing a ceasefire agreement. The White House's National Security Communications Advisor John Kirby has said the US believes, based on what it's been told by Israel, that a deal is getting closer and that there is cautious optimism.
We are working at this very, very hard. We're trying to get it over the finish line.
Reuters has reported that a deal could be signed within days, according to its sources. In a statement, Hamas has said that a ceasefire deal is possible if, in its view, Israel stopped setting new conditions. While Israel continues to signal it wants to get its roughly 100 hostages home, its defense minister has maintained that any ceasefire agreement would still see Israel maintain security over the Gaza Strip. Trent Murray for CBC News, Tel Aviv.
And finally, kids in River Heights hit the ice with Winnipeg's mayor on their renovated outdoor rink. Scott Gillingham played shinny at the Sir John Franklin site of the Corden Community Centre. The outdoor rink is one of the projects the city is funding through its $1.1 million community centre grant program. Steve Watch is the president of the Corden Community Centre.
It's a great, rare community public destination, and it will be used, and it'll be used for generations. And this investment's really what the board can't do. We can put the time in, we can get the volunteers together, we can get the teams together, we can hire people to maintain the facility. But this grant's what we can't do.
The money will pay for repairs, safety improvements, and upgrades like energy-efficient windows and doors. And that is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 1:30.
Josh, I've heard the mayor's actually a pretty good hockey player.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to check out that game when the city played the province, but yeah.
The city won, I know that.
Well,
and he was the captain, so.
They must have picked up a few ringers, too.
And yeah, no kidding. I think they did. He said they dug into the staff and found out who were the best players. They took it kind of seriously, even though they tried tried to act like it was just for fun.
Anything to win.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
That's Josh Crabb. He was joining us from the CBC Manitoba newsroom. Joining us now in studio is our weather specialist, Riley Lachuk. Riley, it feels like it's been cloudy a long time now.
Yeah, we have seen a predominantly cloudy day today, Emily, after a little bit of snow yesterday. You know, on my walk into work this morning, there was a couple of tiny patches of blue up there.
You're always the one who can spot those
I know,
tiny
you
ones.
really have to look for them. If you, I know, I'm probably looking up a little bit too much than looking forward when I'm walking. But yeah, a couple little tiny spots of blue out there. We'll see a little bit of clearing as we get through the afternoon. It might take a little while to get there, Emily, but we'll get it moving a little bit here as we get through the day. -9 in Winnipeg and Portage, as well as in Steinbach at the moment. Should be right around -9 right through the afternoon. So we're looking at the temperature staying pretty steady. Give or take a couple of degrees on either side of that through the day today. -8 in Brandon, -16 in Thompson, Churchill at -23 at the moment. Mostly cloudy still across the province, although we have started to see some breaks starting to form in that cloud cover. So extreme southern Manitoba starting to get a few breaks in that cloud, even into parts of the north, even Thompson, Lynn Lake, Flin Flon getting a few breaks as we get through the afternoon here. That does continue to clear as we get through the day today. So sunny breaks by the later afternoon, clearing in earnest as we get through the overnight hours. So a sunny start to the day tomorrow with a little bit of cloud hanging around still. But for the most part, we're looking at a sunny start to Wednesday. Short-lived, though, as we get later Wednesday into the evening hours, we'll start to see some cloud building in. This ahead of our next weather maker, which is a low-pressure system that is tracking across Alberta and Saskatchewan. This will predominantly impact Western Manitoba once again. So Russell, Roblin, south into the Brandon region, Killarney, into Turtle Mountain, Melita, looking at snow through the late evening, through the overnight Wednesday, to the tune of even 10 to 15 centimeters possible in that western part of the province again.
Again.
In Winnipeg, this pretty much just gives us a glancing blow, at least according to the latest forecast models, as we get overnight into Thursday morning. This does spread, I'm thinking a general 2 to 5 centimeters across Morden, Winkler, Portage la Prairie. Winnipeg will get grazed by this. So 2 centimeters likely, could even see up to 4, maybe 5 centimeters, but we're thinking more on the low end of that as we get into the day on Thursday. We'll start to see a bit more clearing as we get through into the afternoon once again Thursday. So again, we're looking at those highest accumulations in the west, even Dauphin, even on the fringe of this, in that 1 to 2 centimeter range. But Portage, Winnipeg, Steinbach, 2 to 4 centimeters, not out of the question by the time we get to this time Thursday. And then as we get into the rest of the long range forecast, we're looking at temperatures staying below seasonal. So tomorrow, -19 in Winnipeg, -15 for Thursday, -13 for Friday, -14 for Saturday. Varying amounts of sun and cloud as we get through the rest of the week. And there's a warm up into next week.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. How much of a warm up?
Sunday right now, I've got us at -7. Some of the forecast modeling as we get toward Christmas Eve, Christmas Day pushes up closer to the freezing mark.
Oh.
Again, far out, but that's just at least according to our in-house forecast modeling. So.
Okay. Well, you can get in the Christmas spirit with this cooler weather, and then maybe it warms up so that when you have to go out and visit family, it won't be so bad.
It'll make it white Christmas.
Yeah. Sounds perfect. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
That's Riley Lachuk. He's our weather specialist here at CBC Manitoba. He'll be back on Up to Speed this afternoon from 3 to 6. He'll also be on TV later on the CBC Winnipeg News at 6. It's 12:37. You're listening to Radio Noon on CBC Radio 1, 89.3 FM in Winnipeg, 105.3 FM in Dauphin, and in Churchill. We're at 12:30 a.m. I'm Emily Brass, filling in today as your host. Well, it's peak baking season and peak season for eating those baked goodies. What are your favorite holiday treats to bake or eat every holiday season? And what memories are stored in all that sugar and butter? We'd also love to hear about your epic baking fails when maybe things didn't go according to plan. And we've all had them, so don't be shy about that. Give us a call at 204-780-0893. Again, to call us, 204-780-0893. And if you want to text us, if that's better, the number is 204-588-7355. 204-588-7355. And joining us now by Zoom is food writer and cookbook author Julie Van Rosendaal. Hi, Julie.
Hi, Emily.
So tell us, what's your favorite go-to holiday treat?
Oh my gosh, I have to have mincemeat tarts. Have
Oh,
to.
me too.
And like it's just one of my favorite things. And I put mincemeat in everything. I stir it into my oatmeal. I make like the date oatmeal bars I make with mincemeat. It's everywhere. But I also cookies. I actually have some cookies.
I can see them on YouTube if you're watching. She's showing us these amazing cookies.
Exactly. So my mom's pecan shortbread balls are also very familiar cookie, the sort of the ones that are round and you bake them and then you roll them in icing sugar and it creates a sort of buttery, sugary coating on the outside. Chocolate chunk shortbread is always made every year, gingerbread, ginger snaps, and stroopwafel, which are sort of crispy wafer cookies you make with a special iron. My dad is from Belgium, and so we make these stroopwafel. I can't say it with a proper accent because I just don't have it.
That sounds pretty good to me. Yeah.
It's not bad. No, it's not like my dad. But you take caramel and you spread the caramel in between two cookies to make this little sandwich. And then the trick is to set the filled cookie on top of your tea or your coffee mug, and it keeps the caramel warm.
Oh my goodness. And she's demonstrating, for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, she's holding up the caramel. Oh, she's spreading it right now onto the waffle cookie. And yeah, I can see how if you put it on top of the mug, that would melt it on there really nicely, eh?
Yeah, it keeps it warm. My caramel is a little bit cold. It was a little bit softer earlier, but I love making ginger caramel. So you get the sort of ginger, flavors, a little bit of cinnamon in the cookie batter. It's just my favorite time of year for baking.
Yeah, and those do sound like such festive flavors with the ginger and the caramel. Give us a call. Let us know, what are your favorites? What are you baking right now? Are you like Julie, who already has a whole assortment of homemade baked goods, or maybe wait to the last minute? The number to call us, 204-780-0893. That's 780-0893. Or to text us, it's 204-588-7355. 588-7355. So you mentioned your dad's Belgian specialty there. Are there also some favorites that you discovered on your own and that you've been going to in recent years?
Oh, every year I seem to come up with a new favorite. I started making tahini chocolate chunk cookies with tahini in the dough, and then toasted ground sesame seeds that I love sesame as a flavor. And so I toast and grind sesame seeds and put them in the dough. And it's just really a regular chocolate chunk, soft brown sugar dough. And I've always loved fruitcake. I know
Not everyone does.
Not everyone does. I do love dark fruit cake, although it's getting pricier to make. So I haven't made it this year, but I'm forever a diehard fruitcake fan.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. Okay, we do have a text that has come in. Someone who wrote in and said they look forward every year to making a cookie their grandmother made called Mexican hats. And I think today they're considered wedding cookies, the texter writes. I see my grandma's hands rolling out the little Mexican hats and then dipping them into icing sugar and letting them melt in our mouths. I've been making them every year and taking them to households that I visit over the holidays. And that text was from Kelly, who's out in Oak Bank. Have you heard of those Mexican hats? Is that a new one for you, Julie?
It sounds very similar to these pecan balls I was talking about earlier. They're sometimes known as Mexican wedding cakes or Russian tea cakes, or a lot of names that sort of similar cookies have different names depending on who's making them. So it could be that they're shaped differently. Sometimes they're shaped like little crescents instead of balls, but just as shortbread. It sounds like a similar shortbread dough, which is very traditional ratio. It's typically shortbread is a 1-to-4 ratio of sugar, butter to flour. Sometimes a 1-to-3 ratio, which makes a softer dough that you can whip if you do the whipped shortbread. But it sounds like a very similar cookie.
Yeah, and you mentioned the ones in crescents. I remember my grandmother used to make a shortbread that had ground almond in it that was just amazing. I'm going to have to try to get that recipe.
Almond. Exactly. And I actually used half ground almond, half pecans in mine this year because nuts are just so expensive, and almonds tend to be a little bit more affordable.
And then half of them she would dip in chocolate. Those were always the ones that went the most quickly, I'd say.
Totally, you'd bite off the half. She'd dip half of them in chocolate.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
I remember biting off the dipped side of chocolate dipped cookies as a kid, and then like leaving the stump. The part that doesn't have the chocolate. Oh, I forgot about that. Holiday, parties were the best as a kid, and just all the sweets and all the chips and all the, the treats that we didn't really get that often through the rest of the year.
Yeah, and they were just everywhere out in bowls. So we do have a caller on the line. Kel says that they just tried to make their first batch of shortbread. Hi, Kel. Tell us how that went.
Well, it came out pretty good, except they went a little flat. I should have added more flour, I guess. But yesterday I phoned my Aunt Doreen in Winnipeg, and I told her it's pretty hard to find shortbread and mincemeat tarts here in Virden at a bake sale. Mm-hmm. And she said, I'll tell you how to do shortbread. And so she gave me a recipe over the telephone, and after yoga this morning, I bought everything I needed, and I made the first batch, but the second batch is going to be better because I'll spread it out more in the pan, but I can't wait to try them out.
Is that your first attempt at making shortbread, Kel?
The very first one. This is a historic moment in Smith history.
Awesome. Yeah, Julie, what do you think about shortbread? Is that kind of a good place to start if you're doing your first holiday baking?
Absolutely. It's such a basic sort of easy to handle recipe. You don't have to worry about over mixing the dough because there's no moisture really except for what comes from the butter. And so you don't have to worry about over handling. It's great to make with kids. You can add, all kinds of flavors. You can add citrus zest or, loose leaf tea or, herbs like rosemary. You can make sweet or savory. You can stretch small quantities of pricier ingredients like chocolate and nuts a little bit further in shortbread. And there are lots of ways you can shape them. It sounds like Kale pressed it into a pan. Is that how you did it, or rolled it out?
How did you do it, Cal?
She said make balls and then use a fork to press them.
Press down, yeah.
The balls were too big. So this next batch, I'll make them smaller.
Yeah, that is a classic method. I love it when you see those fork marks in there. You really know it's homemade. Kel, are you going to try another recipe now that you've had some success with shortbread?
I wouldn't mind trying Bannock, but I'd need some expert advice.
Bannock? I don't even know that. Is that what you said? Say that again.
Bannock, yeah, Bannock.
Oh, Bannock. Yes, of course. Yeah, Julie, any tips for making Bannock?
There are so many different ways. It's, a lot of recipes are similar to a biscuit. And so, again, it can be baked in the oven. It can be baked over a fire. It can be baked on the stovetop, cooked as fry bread. I think really the best advice is to just do it. Every time you make anything, you learn from that experience, whether you nail it on the first try or, you, like you said, you made the balls a little bit too big. And so now you know for next time to make them smaller. Same thing with anything. The more you make that thing, the better you get at it. And the better you are able to sort of see, what it looks like when it's done, what the dough texture should be like, and how to sort of tweak it so that it's what you want it to be.
Great advice. Thank you, Julie. And thanks, Kel from Virden, for calling in.
You're welcome.
And so we do have a text now. Pamela has written in who says, my mother loved to bake and cook every year, made about 20 different cookies and dainties for Christmas. By the way, Julie, dainties is what people in Manitoba call little squares and little...
Yes, I know. Yeah.
And
I love it.
Yeah, and she says, it wasn't Christmas without ending Christmas dinner by flaming Christmas pudding that she made every year. Wow. And that was until she was 97 years old, and she passed away in 2019. Her daughter wrote and illustrated a book about it. Wow, that sounds like such an amazing bunch of traditions. How about that flaming Christmas pudding, Julie? Have you tried that one before?
Oh, yes. And my grandmother, who lived out in Windsor, Ontario, would make Christmas puddings every year. And so we would get one. And flaming them is really fun, with alcohol and lighting it. And not everybody in my family liked the taste of it, so we didn't do it very often, but it was very dramatic to do the flaming at the end of the dinner in the dark. It was very exciting. You can actually do steamed pudding in a slow cooker, in a crock pot. It's really easy to do in just a Pyrex bowl if you don't have a pudding mold. You can do it in a Pyrex bowl, and it's very similar to fruit cake. I shouldn't say that, or people will not like pudding.
They won't give it a
It's
shot.
yeah. I mean, it's dried fruits and sugar and butter, and it's delicious. Very sort of like a dense steamed cake.
Yeah, yummy. So we are speaking with Julie Van Rosendale, a food writer and a cookbook author and an incredible baker of holiday treats. Give us a call. Let us know what recipes you've tried, what successes you've had, or maybe what flops, and maybe Julie can suggest some ways to improve next time. The number is 204-780-0893. That's 780-0893. And to text us, 204-588-7355. That's 588-7355. Julie, we're really impressed with all your knowledge, and anyone who's watching on YouTube saw some of the amazing things on your plate there that you've already baked, but we've all had some baking fails. Have you had some, and what did you do to improve the next time?
Oh, many, many. That's how we learn, right? And when I teach kids, I tell them it's not really a fail. It's a learning experience. The outcome is not maybe what you expected, but then you sort of know better for next time. And so, yeah, I've had so many mishaps over the years. One year, I was making my usual dark fruitcake, which I've made from the same recipe from the Joy of Cooking for decades. And I believe it's the 1972 edition of Joy of Cooking. Anyway, it doesn't contain any eggs. I've always made it as printed, and I realized a few years ago that it was actually a misprint. There should have been eggs in the recipe.
Oh.
But I still make it without, because it works. It's the way I've always made it. So, but it's funny that it's a misprint. But one year, I made them in these really ornate sort of bundt pans that were small and that were very decorative. I must not have greased them thoroughly, or maybe I forgot to grease them entirely. And the cakes baked, and they did not come out. They did not survive re-entry from the pan into the real world. And they're expensive to make, So I had all these piles and piles of fruitcake crumbs and chunks. So I made trifle. If any kind of cake breaks and it falls apart, make trifle. So many recipes came to be out of mishaps, out of outcomes not planned. And so I crumbled it up. I sautéed some pears and apples, put a layer of the sautéed pears and apples and custard and whipped cream, and it was delicious. I made some sugar plums, which are they're kind of like energy balls, modern day energy balls, dried fruit and nuts, and you rolled in sugar. Works really well with failed fruitcake.
That's a great idea.
Like cake pops, kind of. So yeah, when you have bits that have fallen apart but still taste good, a trifle always works.
Mm-hmm. And then, we talked about shortbread earlier being a good starter recipe, but are there any other treats that are easy to make, maybe kind of foolproof recipes?
Yeah, gingerbread is pretty fairly foolproof. The one thing when it comes to cookies and chewy cookies, like those molasses crinkles, ginger molasses crinkles, because gingerbread sort of comes in a range of textures. You can get snappy, crunchy gingerbread cookies. You can get this sort of chewy molasses crinkles, gingerbread cake, which gets better after a couple days on the countertop. So if you want to do something ahead, it's more affordable than a lot of other cakes. So gingerbread is a winner in my book. But one thing that I always hear from people is that their cookies aren't chewy. They're molasses crinkles, or they're chocolate chunk cookies. And so the trick is to not overbake them, to make sure that they're set around the edges but still kind of soft, because they'll firm up as they cool if you want them to be soft. But yeah, most drop cookies are pretty simple, and shortbread is very basic, And if you want to do something like a pie, I mean, there's no shame in jarred mincemeat, and pick up a package of phyllo pastry, or sorry, not phyllo pastry, puff pastry, or phyllo pastry. But puff pastry is very satisfying to work with. You just thaw it and roll it out, fill it with your fillings. You can do tarts, you can do a galette, and it looks amazing. And no one expects you to make your puff pastry from scratch.
Right. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Well, before we let you go, Julie, kind of, a more deeper philosophical question about it. How do you think baking over the holidays brings people together?
Oh, one of my favorite things is being cooked for. It's something that we can all relate to. We all need to eat. We all are sort of comforted by food and by being fed by somebody else. And so some of my favorite cookies, I actually have some on my plate, are, these chocolate peppermint cookies my neighbor baked for me. Any door drop cookie I loved. That was one of the great things during the sort of height of the pandemic, was coming home and having these cookies and baked goods on my doorstep. But the act of baking together as well. I always have my niece and nephews over for baking over the holidays, sort of creating those good feelings around cooking, not thinking of it as a chore, but thinking of it as a creative outlet and experience, and something that kids can really get involved in and do when they want to show their appreciation to teachers and relatives and friends and coaches. They might not be able to go out and buy a gift, but they can make something special for the people who are important to them.
I love that. Thank you so much for joining us, Julie.
Thanks for having me.
Julie Van Rosendaal is a food writer and a cookbook author.
I've ridden on all sorts of trails, been ran off, escaped, strolled along, most of all run away. And although I wish you were here with me instead, I see happy trails ahead. Still shine in my eyes, I don't know why. Venus at night, first up in the sky. Even though we're watching her from different beds, there's gotta be happy trails ahead. Happy trails, my guide. Nothing's ever easy and love's hard to find, but just finding it once makes it worth all the tries. Happy trails wherever you fly.
Well, that's Orville Pack with Happy Trails, and a fitting song because this is my sign-off from CBC Manitoba. I'm choking up a little because it's a little hard. This has been an amazing experience to be on the air here in Manitoba. I learned so much from everybody and had so much support from people I worked with and people in the audience. And this is a special place, Manitoba. It'll always be in my heart. And thanks to everybody. And yeah, let's move on with the credits. Thanks to everybody who helped put together the show today. That's Marshall Hodgins, our show director, Sierra Sanders, producer, Wendy Parker, our YouTube live stream produced by Kevin Nipatebo, and our producer of audio is Leif Larson. Nellie Gonzalez is also our producer here. And I'm Emily Brass signing off one last time. Thanks for everything. And coming right up is Unreserved.